Takina rā te kawa ōrongo kia pūrea nei ngā au o tā uri mātea te au mai, tā uti nui, tā uti rua, tā uti pā māmao, ki te kūreitanga o a kūrau kure e titia nei e rongo waka iria ke kirunga tūturu o uti waka maua kia tīna, tīna, ie tai ki e. E ngā mate o te wā ko nunumi atu rā ki ngā āwai ki e tatari atu ana ki koutou, aere, aere, aere atu rā. E te kuia, Robin ka ukiwa ko mātou tēnei e eke ana ngā roimata, e māturuturu ana ngā roimata, ai mārepa pai ai tō wairua ki ngā Hawaii ki rātou mā e pōhiri atu ana ki a koe. Nō reira e kui, e oki, e au te moi, noho piri atu rā ki ngā mātāpono o tō wānau i tēnei wā, mā tātou, tō ngākau, tō aroha o mahi, toi, e iri ake moake tonu atu. Hoi anō ka hoki mai ki tātou te hunga ora, tēnā rā koutou ko tai mai ki tēnei o ngā ui o te pō, tēnei rā horo rangi, i runga i te korimako o Taranaki tō e tuki manawa, no reira, nau mai, rarau mai, wakatau mai. Tēnā tātou e te whānau, welcome. Yes, we're here for another kōrero, and I have two beautiful mana wahine, strong wahine who are advocating in so many spaces and places. So we've got an amazing kōrero, heaps of kōrero to talk about tonight. Hoi anō, I'm going to ask for them both to introduce themselves. Because, you know, I don't want to be talking too much fun. I want to ask the questions and listen to the kōrero. But Sanita e hoa, welcome. Nau mai ki te korimako o Taranaki. Let us know who you are and where you're from.
Oh, hello everyone and kia ora. I'm Sanita. I am born and bred Taranaki woman down in Stratford. I have been a part of the community and the arts and performing arts and theatre for a very long time. And I've pretty much been back in Taranaki for about 12 years and opened up my business, my company here, and just doing my advocacy and my activism, I guess. And that's basically me.
Thank you for that. I'm looking forward to our kōrero tonight e hoa. So thank you for joining us here. And being our manuheri for tonight. Whaia Leone, I just want to give you the pau kōrero for tēnei, i runga i tēnei wā. Kōrero mai ko wai koe, no wai koe.
Kia ora tātou, kia ora nāne ko. He uri tēnei o te maunga tītohia, ko te awa ko Taranaki iwi, ko waikato o ngā iwi, ko ngā te rāhere, ngā te mahanga, ngā mahanga taere o Kuhapu. Ai ko waitara tōku tūranga wailai, ko kuwhānau, ko pihama, ko butler, ko manukonga. He kaimahi ahau ki roto i te whare o tūtama wahine o Taranaki, he kairanga ahau. Hia au ki te tautoko o ngā mihi kia rātou mā, ara ki tērā o ngā mārei kura a whaia Robin kahukiwa, tautoko o ngā mihi ki ai, purupura ki ai i tēnei wā, me ngā mihi ki tōna whānau i noho i raro i te kapua pauri. He wahine toa, he mārei kura, he rangatira tērā, anō reira e te kuia haere, moi mai rā. Hoki mai kia tātou, te hunga ora, nā urupā o rātou mā, kai konei tātou e noho ana i roto te ora, ki te kōrero anō mo tēnei, mo nā ahotanga o ngā whānau hapu iwi, te whānau ora, me ngā takatāpuitanga i roto i a Taranaki, no reira. Nei rā te mihi ki a koe hoki Sunita, pai te noho i Wainganui i tēnei, i roto i tēnei whare kōrero i te rānei. I te pō nei, tēnā koutou.
Tēnā koe, waia. Nā reira, we're going to go straight into our kaupapa tonight, and First and foremost, last week when we had our kōrero with yourself, Leonie and Glenn, there's amazing responses. Aroha mai whānau, I am so sorry. I did post it onto the wrong page, but I ended up putting it there in the morning. But we did get some awesome feedback. And so, anō me mihi atu ki a koe whai, Leonie. Sonita, we're going to start off with you, e hoa. Kōrero mai, I've got a question. I've got a couple of questions for you. Can you please take us back to when your love for performing and storytelling began? Where did it all start from, e hoa?
Always been interested, even through school. I was always doing little lip syncs and performances, and I didn't have any siblings or brothers and sisters, so I would be at home just singing into my hairbrush all the time, and and then got into the school productions and really loved that. And I think it was when I was actually on the very first ever season of Treasure Island back in 2000, so I was 19, 20 years old, and from that is when I sort of got into public speaking and going around and going back to my high school and stuff like that, and speaking about you know, issues and things that went on, because I wasn't the most liked person on that show. And I think I spoke about resilience back then. So, and yeah, I had a lot of backlash during the show. So I thought, you know, coming from, you know, small town Taranaki, I wanted to get to other kids that kind of might have been going through that whole tall poppy syndrome that we go through. So I think that's where it kind of stemmed from, and it's just growing more and more into what we do now with Rainbow Storytime and everything else.
So tell me, e hoa, what kind of mahi do you do? And obviously it's come from, you know, your love for performing, just so that everybody on Te Korimako that is watching knows what it is that you do.
So I own a company called House of Flash Limited. So we started out as photo booths and entertainment for events and things like that back in 2013 when we first came back to New Plymouth. And from that, it's just kind of growing more and more and more. So I went back to my roots of loving theatre and decided to choreograph shows and fashion shows. I travelled all around in Canada, USA, Australia, doing Fashion Week shows and things like that as well. And then I worked at Rainbow's End in Auckland for a while and was the entertainment manager. So that's all that kind of what shaped me. But amongst all of that as well, I also studied a nursing degree and became an ambulance officer. So I've always worked both sides of the brain. But yeah, so it was like 6 months before COVID that I decided to, hey, I'm going to go and do events and entertainment full time. And then COVID hit. So it was a great idea.
That was actually a tough time now, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And how were you able to like, so obviously everybody was in lockdown, but was there a way that you felt to express and perform for others and engage with the community?
I didn't. I should have got onto TikTok really early. I'm like being an influencer right now. But I did not. I actually had a coffee van at that time, and I did a raging business with the coffee van. So when lockdowns got slightly lessened a little bit, I was actually using the coffee van like Mr. Whippy and doing community drop-offs and door-to-door coffee with payless, you know, touchless pay and stuff like that, and was able to still deliver people's coffee that they were missing so much. So that was my way of sort of getting through it. And I thought, honestly, I would have been the first person that would go nuts over lockdown, because I'm quite a social person, and I was actually going through I separated from my husband in the October before it, and he refused to leave, so we had to live through with each other over lockdown. So there was a lot of stuff going on, but I just I did really well. I just kept I was supporting other people as much as possible, and I didn't go crazy at all, which is very, not like me.
So what led you into strengthening House of Flash? Because there's not just yourself, Coco Flash. There's also other members of the House of Flash. So where did your vision come from?
So I think, first of all, it was more to do with the theatre side of things. So myself and Tansy Erawiti, we started doing quite a lot of shows and performances together. We both used to be like cheerleaders for BP Bears basketball and things. So we've had a long history. And we decided we were going to start doing the Rocky Horror Picture Show. So we started doing that together, and using a lot of cast and people for that. And with that as well came Daniel, who is Erica Flash, my drag partner. And she was a singing drag queen. She played Frankenfurter in the shows, and she became an integral part of my company, basically. So, and we really wanted to focus on supporting the queer arts more than anything. And because there were no drag queens, there was nothing really going on here in Taranaki, we thought, well, let us step up and do it, and get the freakiness out of the way for anyone else that wants to come forward. Like, we're resilient enough to do it. Let us take the brunt of it. So buffer is basically what I've always been. I've always been the first thing that's going to get hit by the hate, so it's less for the rest of the people behind us. So that's allyship, I guess. Yeah. So that's kind of why we did that.
I tell you, I love Rocky Horror Show. I used to watch it quite often, and I always wanted to do the Glee version of a number of Frankenfurter's songs. And Eddie. I love Eddie.
Yes.
Anyway, I am focused. I am a focused person here. Talk about how has life been for you, considering all of the things that have happened. You are very open in public in regards to what you do, and here in Taranaki, because you are from Whakaahurangi, from Stratford. So, how has it been for you?
It's been an interesting ride. It really has. I was brought up, conservative, traditional Indian family in small town Stratford. So, it was, we belonged to the church. We actually went to Destiny Church for a little bit as well. It was expected that I would do something more with my life, or what was expected, like to be an accountant or a doctor or something like that. But I was always the black sheep, and I was always the creative one. And I'm just so happy to have been able to now have a business where I'm pretty much solely doing what I love and what my passion is. But yeah, growing up with all of that has sort of built me up, because I keep saying about tall poppy syndrome. I don't know what it is. It's a thing that happens in New Zealand and Aotearoa, and it's a thing that women do to each other as well. We should be there supporting and uplifting everybody, but people love to bash you down. If you've got any sort of little bit of success or anything going on, you get bashed down a lot, and you see it everywhere. And that's always been the case, and what happens around here. And so there were some rough times even back in my 20s, growing up and trying to be the person that I am. And so but now I understand why it's happened, because it's now prepared me for what's going on now. And it's doing it for a community that I don't actually belong to. I'm just an ally. But I'm so strongly allied to that community that I will take the hits for them. And I will be the one that, will take the brunt of it. And I'm happy to do that. And even probably 5 years ago, I wouldn't have been able to handle everything that's gone on recently. I'm very empathetic as well. So I'm just like, hate other people feeling awful. And and seeing what people go through. So yeah, it's been a huge growth for me to allow myself to be in that position, I guess. And it's a controversial position. There's people within, the community that don't want me here and don't want me doing this. And even so much in my own family where they don't understand, why are you doing this? Why are you still causing issues, and rocking the boat? But I think that's what I was here for. I'm a boat rocker.
So overall, with all the mahi that you do, because I remember, there would be story times at Pukeariki. And like now we don't see that, and I suppose from the outside looking in, for me, we're missing out on opportunities. So you've spoken about your work, your line of work. How has that been affected?
It's greatly been affected with what happened last year. Protesters. We saw an inkling of it in our first tour back in 2002 or something like that, where we did have protesters that came in and called us demons at the library up in Whangarei. But that was it was just like, okay, that's a bit crazy. But it has gotten worse. People's, I don't know, I don't even know what it is, but people have become more brazen in their negativity towards what happens and not even listening to reason. So with my business, it's pretty much gone in regards to the stuff that I love doing, the performances, because it's unsafe. As I said, we've always focused on the queer arts, drag, burlesque, Rocky Horror Picture Show, things like that. And those are the things that are getting targeted and protested against. And there's been threats of violence and death threats and all sorts of things. So for our own safety, I've had to pull back from all of those things. And that's my major source of income. I'm a tour manager for drag queens for RuPaul's Drag Race. I do all these things with the queer community. And even Outfest, which was Pride, we've had to stop doing that because, we were getting protested against and being told that if you do this, we'll be there type thing in public. And yeah, you are missing out. It sucks. It really does suck. The last time we performed in Pukeariki was probably the most beautiful thing because we had so many people saying negative stuff about us online in the New Plymouth District Council page, and just being really nasty. And we were like, oh gosh, I don't know how it's going to go on the day. I really don't. And I'm usually the first one out in the storytelling sessions. And I come out and I did Moana as one of my lip syncs. And I came through, and I'm usually so focused on just doing that I didn't really look around until the end of the show, at the end of my song. And I looked around, and there was about 300 people there, all just absolutely loving what we're doing. Not a single protester turned up. And I just burst into tears. I was just like, wow, this is phenomenal. And I think I stood there and cried for about 2 minutes straight, just thanking everyone for their support, because they couldn't fit any more people in. They had to turn people away because it was that full. And it is sad that the community are missing out on it. Everyone's asking, when's the next one? Just for the safety, because like our safety be damned. But when they start affecting children, and this is a year ago, we had the fear that they might affect children. And then that's what happened this year in Te Atatu. They barricaded children and parents into a library room. And that's what we feared back then, but it's escalating. And that's why I've had to strip my business and my mahi and my career right down to basics. So all I'm doing now is photo booths, photography, and DJing. And it's hard because there are a lot of businesses doing those things for weddings and birthdays or whatever. But so I'm in a a big pool with a lot of other fish. Whereas before that, with the other things I was doing, I was the only fish in the big sea. So it's been a huge transition. I've had to, go find casual jobs and temping jobs just to tread water and get through this. Really, it's been rough.
It's tough to hear that, like, as an ally, how affected that you are. And also, we already see what's going on, and those that are literally in the center of everything tend to be targeted. And there are many people like yourself that have been pretty much copping a lot of a lot of what's the word for it? Attention from unwanted attention. So I do want to thank you for your time, Sunita, and I hope sometime soon to see you do what you do. And like you said, with Rocky Horror Show, I am a big fan of Rocky Horror Show. I'm telling you now. You give me sweet transvestite to sing. I'll be doing those belting. I tell you that now.
Excellent. Well, it's the 50-year anniversary of the movie this year, and I've been umming and ahhing about if we should do the show, and I really think we should do the show, but we're going to need support. Like, we don't want these people to just buy up all the tickets and no one turns up. I mean, sure, we'll get the money, whatever, but that's not what it's all about when you're doing a show. So it's something that, if I can ensure the safety of people, and if people are, ready for the possible, like, repercussions of what could happen, then I think I'd be ready to do it. I wouldn't have the star of my show, however. He's moved to London. But just saying, I've got a winner of RuPaul's Drag Race who's ready to take that role. So
name drops. We love it. You heard it here first, Whānau.
Well, she is another Taranaki. She's originally a Taranaki queen. She grew up in Mawhao, so.
Oh, well, there we go. Even better.
Yeah. So watch this space. Well, I'm still thinking.
I would love to see it. And I believe that there's many whānau that are watching who would love to help or participate or even buy a ticket or two.
Yeah. It might end up having to be a fundraiser to help us with our court costs, which are very ongoing at the moment. So we've still got another $100,000 that we sort of needed to get for the case that we've got going on. So it's good. It's pretty big stuff.
So we wanted to thank you for your time, Sunita. And there's a little bit of a message there from Alana Presley. She says, love your passion for life, Sunita. So we've got whānau that are watching. And but thank you so much, Ehua. Whai Leone, how did you take all of the kōrero so far?
Well, it's Sunita, it's really great to get at least a part of an update around what's going on in terms of the kind of attacks that are happening around the country, not only for the kind of rainbow storytelling, but the broadening of that, the escalating of that, and that one of the key things we've been talking about is the need for within the Takatapu community for whānau and Hapuniwi to be standing up, for communities to be standing up, for this to actually to be a community issue, that it's not solely an LGBTQI or a Takatapu issue. And so, with you and hearing too that your partner in the mahi has had to really leave the country for their own well-being, just kind of reaffirms that need for us to be more community in how we are dealing with these issues, particularly around the kind of the hatred and the toxic way in which your work has been targeted, which has been very visible over the past couple of years. and the kinds of, the defamation or the ways in which people's lives have been impacted by being defamed, and some of the really deeply embedded misinformation that's been going around. The consequences of that, there is a whole lot of layers of harm that are happening. So it was good to get that, at least a little bit of an update around how that is playing itself out.
Yeah, it's definitely been a rough time. It honestly has. But I can step away from this. That's a difference. Me being the ally, I can brush it off my shoulder. It's the actual LGBTQIA plus community out there that is suffering through this, that have been going on with this all of their lives, and it's continuing to escalate. They're the ones that have to live through this, and that's who we have to fight for. So the allies need to step up and be the buffer, and take the hits. And we've tried just letting people have their say and saying nothing, silence is golden type thing. But no, silence is not golden. We need to be stepping up and challenging people with facts and saying, no, that behaviour is not tolerated. It's not acceptable at all. And that's what true allyship is all about. So I'm hoping that I can help sort of teach that.
So I want to touch on that by Leonie, talking about strategies. What are some strategies that we can activate or educate within our communities to strengthen ourselves, especially around these types of behaviours?
Well, I think, that's a really good point that, Sunita's making, and exempling in terms of roles of allies. And it's not something that we talk a lot about, but in terms of tangata tiriti, and when we've talked about treaty issues, it's a similar form of allyship that we're actually talking about, which is really around walking alongside, being there, taking some of the hits, not just providing buffers, but actually speaking back to the kind of misinformation, speaking back to the harmful, ways in which Takatapu and the LGBTQI community has been attacked in terms of organisations like Destiny's Church, New Zealand First. A lot of what's coming out of New Zealand First is enabling of that kind of speak. So when we're talking about strategies, it's really around, because, if we think about in our lives, we're often allies in a whole range of different ways, for a whole range of different communities. And so it's about being consistent. It's about having awareness. It's about having a consciousness. It's about ensuring that people have access to the knowledge that they need to have in order to make good, informed decisions around where to best put their support. I think, in terms of going into things like court cases, that we need to have our communities, our broader communities, really, as Sunita is doing, and talking about fronting those things. So in many ways, if we think in the Māori community, if we think about what are the kind of expectations we have of good manuhiri, or of good partners, or of tangata tiriti, in terms of allyship, the same principles, the same mātāpono need to be applied in all other areas, including, in terms of whānau supporting their takatapui whānau members. So we do know what allyship looks like. We do know what having that strong hoa mahi, hoa haere kind of approach looks like, because it's something that as Māori we expect in a tiriti relationship. And so it's actually about applying the same, principles in that way. And so it doesn't mean that everyone has to go to court, and it doesn't mean that everyone has to front in a physical way to some of the physical violence that's happening, because it's not for everyone to do. but it is for some people to do.
Mm.
And so it's really working out, and sometimes that means pushing past your own comfort, past your own levels of comfort, your own comfort zone, in terms of providing the kind of protective, supportive spaces. So, I talked a little bit last week, Naniko, around one of the key research outcomes in terms of the Honour Project Aotearoa was Takatapu saying very clearly, when I have that person in my whānau, that is my person, that will stand up for me no matter what, that will front things no matter what, that will challenge back homophobia and transphobia and heteronormativity, all those things, and will be there, in no matter what context. If that person is there with me in my whānau or in my close-knit circle, I can go into any context and feel good about myself, feel confident in myself. I can carry myself in the world. And so that's where allyship, that's where support, that's where tautoko comes to play. And it's a real meaningful and enduring way of being in your life.
Do you feel that hapu and iwi are exempling what that framework looks like, or is it being noticeable? Is it easy to identify? And our spaces and our Māori are providing what that manaakitanga looks like, or how whakaaro?
Well, I think it's easy to identify when it's not there. I think it's easier to identify when it's not there. Because often when that kind of tautoko is there, it's actually a part of someone's everyday life. It's what you do, So it's not a special, you're not making a special attempt to do something. Like when you are supporting the LGBTQI community, you're there all the time in that role. Yeah, you don't get to move in and out of it when you please. And I think that's the point Sunita was making, So, which is the same point as we would say for tangata whenua, tangata tiriti relationships. You don't get to just move in and out, when it's convenient for you.
It's all in, unconditional. It really is
unconditional. It's and you're present. So in terms of hapu and iwi, I think that we have a lot of education to still be doing around how hapu, how whānau, how hapu, how iwi understand and decolonize their thinking around sexuality, decolonize their thinking around relationships. And I'm not just talking about intimate relationships, I'm also talking about familial relationships, how we've really bought into this really domesticated, nuclear, heteronormative family unit. We live like that. Our lives are framed around that. And so there are a whole range of ways when we're talking about dealing with decolonizing sexuality, decolonizing relationships, decolonize how we live, that we really have to come to question a whole lot of those things, a lot of stuff around gender, a lot of stuff around roles. And so we have a lot of work to be done. There's a lot of work to be done. And it's ongoing. But as I said, within whānau, what I do know is that when you have that whānau support, it's easier to do that bigger support. When you have that person, it's easier then to do, which is kind of Naniko, I guess why we're doing these, hours on the Sunday night, really, is because we can recognise a need that has been escalated by the behaviours of certain organisations outside of communities at the moment. But because they're so blatant with that, just when that blatancy of their violence goes away, it doesn't mean we stop. There's a whole, that's enabled because of the whole of the undercurrents that occur, because of the whole of colonial thinking that happens, that enables that behaviour. And the current coalition government and its kind of neoliberal, white supremacist, heteronormative way of being, there's every way of describing that, is emboldening it. it's emboldening it. And it just really takes one minister to say something that will enable the escalation even further. So I do think around things like in terms of what happened, say the Pride Parade in Tamaki, and the appropriation and the misuse of haka as a cultural tool, right, for fear, utilising it for fear. You know, what would happen if our 50 kapa haka groups were there? You know, I mean, because that misappropriation of culture requires a cultural response. And so that is a question to our exponents and our experts and our tohunga in the area of kapa haka, our tohunga in the area of haka, our tohunga in the area of maurako, of wedo. You know, if that was on your marae, what would your response have been?
Tika, and I think that's probably a great conversation to have within our hapu in iwi and marae, due to the fact that we don't know when they will turn up, or these people would utilise haka in a way of intimidation. Actually, it's not the core, the core mode of a haka is to actually express one. But the kupu of haka is part of that, the aringa of haka, the composition of haka, the integrity of haka itself has been diminished by other people's. I can go on and go on, but it definitely needs to be a conversation to be had within our hapu and iwi spaces. But policy-wise, Whai Leone, do you feel that education, health, justice, do you feel that are we being represented well, or is there a need for more representation?
Well, on the whole, we're not represented at all, really. And that's going to be even less so. I mean, I think Glenn touched on last week the kind of the rainbow tick and how that is insufficient. Because on the whole, it is generally not, there's no accountability, there's no way of actually knowing what people are really doing. That you can tick a box and that's fine. And that's not to say that's not an opportunity for organisations to try to shift, right? To shift the way of being. But what we have at the moment in this whole kind of the backtracking of ideas of equity, of ideas of diversity, definitely in terms of te tiriti, because for Māori, we're not a diversity group, we're tangata whenua. So we don't fit in the diversity, equity, inclusion realm. We sit outside of that realm because we have a tiriti relationship that overarches all of that, right? Inside of that, we also have an obligation to ensure the well-being of the multiple identities that make up our communities. Right? And so the question is to our own organisations, how do we articulate, how do we ensure that, how do we ensure safety? And actually one of the things I think, Sunita, that you really pointed out is that idea of the fear of certain groups turning up to be violent. And how real that is.
Their sole purpose is hate and fear, and it's not nice at all. Fear-mongering.
And so, but what they do with that fear is that they instill it so deeply that in fact they don't even have to turn up. So they create a context of fear that actually means they may or not turn up.
But people run
scared. You're going to be cancelled anyway, just in case.
And that's exactly what happened. That's
Yeah.
exactly what happens.
Yeah.
And they think they've won, and then it emboldens them further. And that's the horrible catch-22 that we're in.
Yeah. And there's a lot of kind of discussion in terms of things, you know, in terms of how we think about these things. You know, that when you have a kind of way of creating fear, that it's almost like a surveillance model, you know. You can have a camera there that doesn't work, but there's a camera there, and therefore you can feel or believe you're being surveilled, even though you're not. In real life, and real. So this whole thing around creating fear in communities, and I think it does create fear, and so that enables things to happen that may not have happened, and then so people will stop talking just in case. People will stop performing just in case. People will cancel shows just in case. And I think that that is what we've seen in the past 2 years, an escalation of this, to the point of people actually becoming so fearful that they're not able to move and to have and to do the work we do, and to be creative in the way that we be creative, and to be out in community, and to be whatever you are and whoever you are in the way you are visibly. And so one of the things in the research, again and again, it comes back to really community accountabilities and responsibilities to provide protection for all members of the community that are under threat, is that for takatapui, if you do not see yourself, if there is no visibility, if there is no role models, or if there is no way of seeing a kind of reflection of yourself in society, of course it's going to be more difficult to be yourself. Of course it's going to make you more unable to come out. If you are scared of that, then you know that. And so the level of distress and the level of fear experienced through racism, through homophobia, through transphobia is continuing to rise, because we're in a context politically and socially where it's actually being enabled to rise. So how do we as whānau ensure the well-being of our whānau members?
That's right. And I think we just can't forget the fact that the entire Pride movement that we're seeing all over the world for so many years was one Black trans woman who created that movement back in 1969.
Marsha P. Johnson.
One person. So it takes one person to take a stand and create a movement, and it will grow. And I think we just need to have more people doing that in all the different communities and then banding together.
Yeah. Well, it means being very public and very, very visible and making statements. I think one of the things that we're often not very good at in terms of hapu leadership or iwi leadership is actually making really public statements around these things. It doesn't mean that hapu and iwi are not engaged with whānau, not engaged with their members, not you know, doing things within themselves, but actually we do need a more vocal expression of disdain for what is happening. And we do know that for our people, that is often by having key public people within Te Ao Māori who are willing to say those things, who are willing to do those things, and not to leave them to takatapui and LGBTQI only to do that, you know, but actually to be really active in it. And so within Taranaki, yes, it would be very helpful if the iwi leadership groups and the iwi chairs and the CEOs of the iwi around the maunga made a statement around that they will not accept this kind of behaviour towards whānau members within our territories.
Mm.
you know, and that it won't go ignored or it won't go unspoken. I think that is something that is important because our hapu and our our whānau, we know who all our people are, and actually we know all of our hapu leadership and our iwi leadership, and I can't see any of them actually not supporting that. It's just I don't think it's ever been put out there in that way.
Yes. Yes. So how do we turn this kōrero into kōrero in regards to responsibility, especially for media platforms, whether it's te ao Māori media or mainstream? How do you feel about the coverage?
How do you feel, Sunita, around what's been happening in the media coverage of the various events?
It's been what I'm finding with the coverage is it's a lot of fear stuff again. It's not actually going, this is what's happening, and politicians are being so vague about it and not really saying that it was absolutely disgusting or anything like that, like that should never have happened. This is not what we're about. It's everyone's scooting around the issues, and I don't know what that's about, to be honest. Like, we should be outraged that people are being treated in such a way and being behaved towards that way. We should be outraged that people feel like that they're better to end their own lives than to exist because of what people say about them and to them. Like, we need to be outraged by all of that, and we need to tell people that how someone lives their life is not actually your business and it's not affecting you. Like, no one's saying that. No one is telling these people that, hey, okay, you are not gay, you're not trans, you don't need to live that life, you don't need to actually put your nose into that business. Let them live how they want to live. And yeah, the media side of things, it's just super hard because you also want to protect the rainbow community. They don't necessarily want their face out there. They don't necessarily. We still live in a community where people haven't come out, where them being at a pride event is going to actually out them, and it could be a danger to them. So even trying to report and post videos, like it was asked that the Te Atatu Library video was not shared around, but the media still used it because there were people there that feared for their family finding out, and no one respected their wishes. So it's such a fine line. Like it's crazy. It really is. It's a really hard position to be in. We want people to see this awfulness that's going on, but you also need to protect the people whose lives are literally in danger. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I agree. I think that we, on the whole, are not getting adequate analysis or depth in the media coverage and on multiple levels. And I think one of them is that we're really not getting that kind of strategy around the challenging of the belief systems that are being put out there about people that are fundamentally not true. And we touched on this a little bit last week. So to be calling, takataupui, trans, LGBTQI people pedophiles, is fundamentally, it's not any misinformation, it's a lie. And it's just something that they utilize to demean and undermine people's well-being and integrity and dignity. And we've said this before, the majority of convicted pedophiles in public in this country are coming out of the churches. So, but there's this continued discourse continues to be allowed to be articulated without any challenge to it. And it just continues to shift and move through all kinds of media sources that just continue to destroy, how people even see themselves within their own communities. So I think that there is something around, and it's a bigger strategy around the misinformation that we are dealing with, and what is a core strategies to not only protect and not only to activate those kind of protection mechanisms, but to speak back to. And the ones who should be speaking back to are actually the media, are actually about, because they're the ones who have the capacity to put this out there. And so, we've heard this across the board, and we heard a lot of it with the Treaty Principles Bill. That what happens is that actually we're getting these ideas that are put forward that actually are the total opposite, in fact. The total opposite. So we hear David Seymour saying, well, we have to be all equal, and basically it's Pākehā people that are experiencing racism. Well, no, they're not. They're not.
It's like it's getting weaponized, That's the
weaponized.
It's weaponizing, and it's really rough. It really is. The amount of just blatant lies that just get shared out there and then spread, and it becomes a conspiracy theory, and suddenly everyone's talking about it, and then it escalates into something else. Like I'm probably a lizard person by now, but it's like I've seen it firsthand where the blatant lies coming from these people to used as a weapon and turn people against you is crazy. There was the allegation that Rainbow Storytime Queens, us, were making children touch us inappropriately in the libraries. And I said, oh, can you send me a photo of the person that this was about? And they sent a photo of me. And I'm like, are you serious? That's actually me dressed in drag. And they were like, well, this is the person that's going to jail. And like, that's the absolute truth. And it's just, it's awful. And you got to also wonder, are the media in cahoots with certain people? That's something that could really happen, because the rhetoric that comes out of things is just a little bit on the wayside sometimes. And that's the hard thing to fight.
Well, see,
I think that's why it needs to be challenged, and it needs to be challenged in the fact that there is a court case going ahead, and that there will be some defamation components of that, because it just will continue to happen. But what happens is that there's a lot of playing on people's insecurities. There's a lot of playing on people's homophobia and transphobia. There's a lot of playing on people's racism. And so, you combine all these things together, and you begin to get a kind of picture of a whole group of people that are willing to say or do anything in order to remove another group of people. And that we know, in terms of the ways in which both, Winston Peters in particular from New Zealand First and Destiny Church speak about the LGBTQI community, speak about the Takatapu community, that it's actually based on a whole lot of lies, dishonesty, misinformation, mistruth. There is actually no evidence, no proof, no indication that any of those things are actually happening, and that the things that they are accusing, I mean, even the languaging of being evil and, and trying to create a context of sexualizing children, and it's just actually all made up, and it's a damaging series of lies that just continues to be escalated and given more oxygen and given more truth. And so, there is a role in media I mean, we don't really have a lot of investigative journalism, and I think that's a really big issue that we have. But also, we don't have a lot of people that are able to quickly say, well, actually, no, that's not true.
Mm.
That's actually a lie, and continue saying it's, you know,
Yeah.
oh, Willie,
Yeah.
Willie
I
Jackson, the
do
end
try
of
to
the
do that
treaty
quite a lot.
principles.
It is hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like there's the blocking mechanism and all that sort of stuff. People just,
Yeah.
block you if they don't want to hear from it, and but it's pretty full on.
So how do we go from we know what happens, we see it, and we can identify ngā mahi tūkino, to strengthening our whānau and educating our whānau in a way where they're empowering themselves and they can actually call it out right then and there, and do it in a way where it actually has mana. It really it strengthens the mana of them as a kaitiaki, but also as if they're tangata, if they're takatapu, or if they're in the LGBT, in the rainbow community. So, what are some things that we can do to educate ourselves? What are some resources? What are some kai kōrero, some anyone that we could talk to or think of having present so that we could strengthen that side for us? Kia kōrero e te whakaaro?
Well, it's multi-layered, right? So we have to do it in a public way. We have to do it with as much leadership or those with public profiles. We need that level. But we also know that, and I can really speaking in terms of Te Ao Māori, what we know in Te Ao Māori is it's the greatest place of transformation is actually at the whānau level. It's actually, that's why whānau order has been such a powerful movement. It's that we know if we can have whānau understand that it's their role to ensure that the mana and the well-being of every whānau member is uplifted and upheld. That actually the connection in terms of our relational way of being, in terms of whakapapa, in terms of that level of connectedness, is actually the grounds by which we build relationships. We actually don't build relationships in Te Ao Māori, and I think probably anywhere in particular, based on sexuality or sexual preference. That's not how families build healthy families. That's not how we build healthy relationships. And so there is, because of the nature of colonialism and the nature of that intersection of gender and race and colonization and oppression and all those things that come to play that we're constantly battling with people in power all the time, right? Because that's where these lies are about keeping dominant, people keeping a sense of superiority and dominance. So it's like this whole network of domination that happens. We're trying to kind of take it chunk by chunk, and I think we need to kind of do it more holistically. So for Māori, for whānau, if we say he mana tō te tangata, so every person has mana, then there is no grounds for demeaning sexuality. There is no grounds for demeaning sexual preference. So,
I love that.
And I think that across a whole range of Indigenous cultures, for sure, minority cultures, ranges, of even religious belief systems, at times. If we're actually talking about mana, if we're talking about the inherent dignity of a person that we're in relationship with. And so it's, and I think in Aotea as well, that those are some of the fundamental principles that would bode well for all people if that underpinned our societal relationships, the way in which society operated. But on the other hand is actually just not letting it go by. You cannot just let it go by. You can't constantly enable things by just not saying anything. And it can be very difficult. I know that. And I know that not all people feel confident to do that. But I also know that there are a lot of people that as soon as anything around gender or anything around homophobia pops up, they're immediately on it, bang. And that's really important.
Yeah.
That we do that.
Aye. And so
Totally.
so hopefully we can create some spaces to have kōrero and wānanga and in-depth time where we can spend educating ourselves, being exposed to kōrero like this, being informed and updated in regards to what is going on for the well-being of everybody, really. So I'm hoping that part of that strategy, we get to see the Rocky Horror Show. Well, I'm just saying, pet peeve.
Just won't
I'm
stop.
down for that.
Relentless. Stuff your safety. I want the show.
So I'm just going to give you any last kōrero before we wrap up. Sunita?
Just kindness, please. Honestly, just people can live however they like. They don't need to be forced into a box that you think they need to be forced into. People are most happy when they're able to be their own unique individual self. So why can't we just allow that to happen? If you think someone's going to go to hell or whatever, that's a decision that they've made. You don't need to get involved with that. And, you know, just let everyone just be fabulous and amazing and beautiful, and love everyone around you, no matter who and what they are. Everyone deserves love and everyone deserves support. You might have family members who are trans or homosexuals or anything like that. You aren't an ally just because you know someone who is those things. You're an ally once you start standing up next to them and for them. So just remember that you are not a supporter of a community if you just know someone who is. That doesn't make you the supporter. You actually have to be out there, loud, and trying to make a difference and getting away from the horrible stuff that people are saying. You need to answer that stuff.
Kia ora. Thank you for that, Sunita, and wish you all the best for the court case and everything, and hopefully you get some more business after this kaupapa whānau. Have a look around and see what she does. We caught up and took some photos, didn't we? We took some photos.
We did. The photo booth. So www.flashmob.co.nz.
But thank you so much. Whai Leonie, ka koe te he kōrero?
Well, you know, I think if we can go into that kōrero around uplifting, around supporting people's being, you know, he tapu tō te tangata, he mana tō te tangata. And so if we think in those tikanga ways, those fundamental principles of our tupuna, that there is a sacredness, there is mana, there is dignity, there is integrity in every person, right? Then maybe we stop doing the judgmental stuff that is actually occurring around something that is not even ours. These definitions of sexuality that have come from colonialism are actually not ours. Our people were very open, very welcoming, very uplifting, and very, very celebratory of all of the parts of who we are. And so I think that whole way of being that we're currently dealing with, that's about fragmenting people, that's about denying people's ways of being and their lives, because you've got this kind of imported belief system around how they should be. It does have to stop. It does have to stop. And I agree with Sunita, and I think we made a similar point last week. We are talking about people who do no harm to you. You know, they are celebrating their lives. Takatapui are celebrating their lives. Rainbow community are celebrating our lives in a way that actually does not do any harm to anybody. We are parts of whānau. We are whānau members. We are daughters. We are granddaughters. We are grandchildren. We are parents. We have children. and, and make incredibly creative and important contributions to Aotearoa. And so I agree, this whole thing of doing harm to people that do no harm to you really has to stop. And so, me maumahara tātai, he tapu tō te tangata, he mana tō te tangata. Whakanuia.
Tēnā koe pai mō kōrero, he tapu tō te tangata, he mana tō te tangata, he aha te mea nui o tēnei ao, ko te tangata. Nō reira, ka tika me me hiki kōrua I tai mai I runga I tēnei o ngā haora, kua haora ngā meneti I runga I tō tātou nei hui I runga I te korimako o Taranaki. Koutou I mātiro mai, I wakarongo mai ki ngā kōrero tēnā koutou katoa, koutou I tuku aroha mai tēnā koutou anō. A hoi anō, ka mutu I konei tō tātou hui, ka waka tepe ki tētahi karakia, pai haere tēnei wiki e tatau mai. Nō reira, wakataka te au ki te uru, wakataka te au ki te tonga, kia mākina kina ki uta kia mātaratara ki tai. Kua hiake ana te atakura, he tio, e uka, e au, ti e mauri ora, tēnā ra koutou.
Mauri ora, mauri ora.